I think we should get to the local important information that's going on, and that's these mosquitoes that are about to be released here on the island of Maui. These are wolbachia infected mosquitoes that are put out as a experimental biopesticide, supposedly to stop avian flu. And we're going to bring in Tina Leah. She's going to give us a little more of a rundown about what's going on and what more information she has found.
Hey
Hey,
Scott,
Tina, welcome to the show.
nice to see you.
Nice to
I'm
see you
ready.
as well.
I'm ready with some new information that you're not gonna like.
Oh, wow, wow, wow. All right. Well, we're looking
Yeah.
forward to this information. I was just actually I was in communication with some people from Haleakala Ranch today trying to find out if they are involved. But there's I guess they don't know about it.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear. I think a lot of people don't know, and we're right at that moment where everybody is starting to know. So the more people can learn about this, and I believe the more that is learned about, the less people are going to want this to happen. So what we have is, first of all, I went ahead and printed. I want you to see what we're dealing with. This is the Maui Environmental Assessment. I'm kind of
Wow.
old school, so I like to, you know, be able to figure out what I'm looking for and then find it online. So
You got a lot
um,
to talk about at Christmas this weekend, huh?
I was going to say, you were mentioning the holidays, and they went ahead and released this environmental assessment, and then as well as I don't know if it was a coordinated thing, but the EPA exemption application, emergency exemption to use these mosquitoes as a biopesticide that has not gone through the EPA process is also up for public comment. So those are the two things first right off the bat that I want to make sure the public is aware of. And you can go to our website, hawaiiunites.org, and right there on the homepage there is a really obvious link to is it a good time to start sharing screen, or am I
Yeah,
getting
absolutely. Go for it.
okay? So again, I want to point out that the total project area, 64,666 acres. They're talking about releasing up to 6,000 mosquitoes per acre up to 2 times a week, which comes out to 775,992,000 mosquitoes per week. And that is over 40 billion of these biopesticide mosquitoes per year. And again, this project has no end date. They are saying that they need to do it continually and indefinitely, basically, for it to work. So very concerning. And when you see what they're talking about for long term, you're really not going to like what's happening here. So that's what's going on there. And yes, this is being presented by the state to fight avian malaria that is threatening the endangered native birds, which I do believe is true. Still looking for more details on that. But there are other things they can do and have been doing. So it's the way that they're making this suddenly an emergency. How long have we known about this, and what other options were considered? Why all of a sudden, you know, emergency, let's make sure the EPA lets us use these, not yet cleared for use biopesticide creatures. Anyway, I'm getting a little worked up. So I wanted to look at the risks before I launch into this, because I'm just going to go off. Do you have anything you want to ask before I get into
No,
that?
keep
Okay.
keep on going.
Okay.
Let's
I got
dive
so
into it.
many, yeah, I got so many tabs open. And when I get to the federal stuff, oh boy. Okay. So in the risks, we have found, again, I have this sectioned in a few different sections here. The first section involves what Dr. Lauren Pang, who is the vector and tropical disease expert, speaking as a private citizen, who has explained his concerns about the horizontal transmission, or what he calls horizontal spread of the bacteria, and potentially how that can affect the entire system, and the increase in pathogen infection, and etc. So that is a huge concern, which we have some more information on that. And that can also cause, again, the unexpected evolutionary events. So one more time, I'm going to explain. The horizontal transmission has to do with the mosquitoes passing this bacteria, this strain that we don't have on this island that the lab-reared mosquitoes have been infected with, passing that bacteria to each other through the feeding sites or the standing water, as opposed to the way that this is intended, which has to do with it being passed on evolutionarily by the breeding. So this would be an unintended result, is the horizontal transmission of that bacteria, and that can cause different things to happen with the mosquitoes that we can't say for sure exactly what might happen, but we do know that what can happen is that can cause the wild female mosquitoes that we have here to now become a form of the lab-bred mosquitoes, because they've now taken on that bacteria that we don't have, that particular strain. And they're making a major effort, I would think, to prevent these female lab-reared mosquitoes from being introduced here accidentally, missorted and introduced here. So the fact that that could be created here, and they're not even addressing that, it's major. It's major. And so that means they can breed. So the whole point is to, not allow the breeding to happen in order to reduce the population, because of this incompatible strain of the bacteria between the lab males and the wild females here. It's to make it so that the eggs aren't viable, and that would reduce the population. But if you start creating those females here with that same strain of the bacteria, they can now reproduce, and they can even do a what's called a population replacement, where now our mosquito population has been replaced with these lab bred bacterial strain mosquitoes. So that is, in a nutshell, the primary concern. And in addition to that, the horizontal transmission can cause increased pathogen infection and possibly even behavioral changes, because the wolbachia is a parasitic organism. So we have that concern. Now, when we go into the environmental assessment, the state is admitting to any number of things that you are not going to like hearing about here that could happen. First, let me say there's just a few more things that they haven't noted anywhere, but that we are aware of, and this is, again, vetted with the scientific peer-reviewed studies and details that we're presenting information that is very much a possibility. So first of all, state has already admitted to the possibility of accidental release of the misidentified lab-brood females. There's something called horizontal gene transfer, which is different from horizontal transmission, and that's of the wolbachia DNA to other invertebrates. And that is a process that can include the spread of antibiotic resistance genes among bacteria, fueling pathogen evolution. Not good. Biopesticide drift would be the movement through the wind to unintended areas of these lab-reared mosquitoes, which are designated by the EPA as a biopesticide. So this would be a form of pesticide drift with a living organism, biopesticide, mosquitoes, going places they were not intended to go, because we cannot predict the wind. And we also did not sign up for that. We are not consenting to these creatures on the wind coming at us. Okay. Again, impacts on the endangered birds. If the mosquitoes become a better vector of avian malaria, which there are studies with different mosquitoes showing that that can happen with this process of the wolbachia, the horizontal spread, etc. And again, impacts on humans should the mosquitoes become a better vector of West Nile virus, which also can be transmitted to birds, and which we don't have on the islands yet, but maybe they're bringing it with this project. We don't know. Okay. Yeah. So not good. This bird's saying, no, this mosquito is bad enough. I do not think I need more that you are creating and bringing in and targeting me with. No, thank you. So
yeah,
here
sounds like a really like the potentials here, like a way outweigh what anything of protecting the avian flu or the avian malaria. That's just sounds like a very dangerous situation.
It really does. It really does, and it can make the situation worse. And it very much looks like they are avoiding looking at that because they have an agenda, and we're going to look at that. Okay, this is very important, and I am asking anybody who's watching that is of the Native Hawaiian community or connected with the Native Hawaiian community, please, contact me, look at the website, take a look at some of this information that's being presented as honoring the Native Hawaiian community. This is what some of the people, well, all of the people, there were 7 cultural descendants, Native Hawaiian lineal descendants, and recognized cultural experts interviewed for the cultural impact assessment of the environmental assessment for Maui. And every single one of those 7 people interviewed did express concerns about the impact of this project. So out of respect for them, I'm not going to share that specific portion directly of the environmental assessment. It's got their names and all of that, but that is available in the assessment if you want to verify what I'm showing you here. But I've taken some notes of some of the things that were mentioned. Bacteria, these are the concerns of the Native Hawaiians who were specifically asked, because they are descendants and or cultural experts, what concerns they might have about this project. And just, again, the state documented all this and said, yeah, we're going to go ahead and do this project and present it as honoring the Native Hawaiians and their culture. Okay. Bacteria used for mosquito mitigation methods might spread elsewhere into the environment. The method of using bacteria to make mosquitoes infertile. Basically, what's that about? Maui as an experiment or a pilot project. Not liking that, just as we don't like that. We are not a petri dish. This is not a place you experiment on, life. Okay, the story of bringing the mongoose to kill the rat, thereby creating a new problem. We talked about that last time. This is what our state does. We're going to fix the problem by bringing this thing in, and now we have 2 problems because we don't know what we're doing and we don't care because there's money involved, and that's that. Impact on the birds, we talked about that. The project area is sensitive. People depend on native flora and fauna for their livelihoods, okay? And that has to do with cultural practices, etc., and the resources. Project area is a fragile system. There could be impacts on the system as a whole because everything is connected. Just like all of our, all of us people are connected. Everything is connected. One thing you do affects another. So they're just going to unleash this on the whole system and see what happens. Potential impact to cultural resources and traditions, again. They talk about trying to work around the schedules of specific dates of cultural events and things like that, which is, yeah, they should do that. But does that mean all the rest of the days are open season for whatever they want to do here? Okay. Harm or impact to other species, effects on humans, what if an affected mosquito bites a person, possible residual effects in the environment, impacts on other animals like opae, which is shrimp, and opu, which is the goby fish that live in the streams. These are things people eat. Impact on animal habitats, whether or not adequate studies and research have been done. No, they have not. Possible residual effects on other insects. We've got the dragonflies that eat the mosquitoes. We have multiple other insect, ecologies up there that will be affected by this. Impact on native plants used for lei making, weaving, and other cultural practices. Possible impacts on water sources. Keeping the public informed. Well, you have not kept the public informed. You are, it seems, intentionally keeping information from the public. Skepticism of the sterility of the wolbachia mosquitoes. I'm not sure scientifically on that, how to address that, whether or not that might be an issue, but I can say that aside from sterility, these mosquitoes might be able to breed with each other due to the horizontal transmission. So yes, this might not be worded the way that we are presenting that aspect of it, but it is the same concern. They can breed, they can take over, and it's probably going to happen. Impact on other islands from water sources connected through tides and currents. So, again, all the islands are connected through the ocean, and this, possibly could have an effect as far as that goes. We just can't say. And then here, I'd like to just read this to tie up how the state tidied up this little area about talking to the Hawaiian descendants and experts, quote unquote, from the state. There was concern expressed by informants that the project could potentially and adversely impact native flora and fauna. If the project and concerns about the use of this biocontrol discourage practitioners from conducting their traditional or customary practices, it would be an adverse effect to these cultural activities. But we're going to go ahead and do it. Okay, so here's resource mitigation if you want to look at the EAA and see how they're addressing some of this stuff. And that's good. It's good that they're looking at it, but the fact that it could happen, not good. All right, before I go into the federal information that we've come across, I want to point out again that this is in the Maui Environmental Assessment. They are saying the frequency of releases of the mosquitoes may also be reduced if there are advances in technologies for transporting mosquitoes, including lab rearing in Hawaii. So I told you when I saw that, it stood out to me, and now I know why. So we're going to go right into the Department of the Interior. This is the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, explaining the federal information on this project. And this is also, I have not yet made this available on the website, but I will do that because this is important. So this is tied in specifically to this project at the federal level and how this funding ties in and what our U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is focusing on, and sort of the backstory on this and the long range goals. So I'm going to point out a few things that I saw here. First of all, this is important. This is them admitting that they don't even know if this is going to work. Risk management is and will continue to be an integral component during implementation of this strategy. For example, although used worldwide for human health, wolbachia IIT, that's the, well, previously called incompatible insect technique, is a novel tool for conservation purposes, and its degree of efficacy in remote forest landscapes is unknown. It's an experiment. They have no idea. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
No known outcomes. Let's just experiment on the island of Maui. I mean, what could happen? What could go
Right.
wrong?
Right. And here they are admitting it. Here they are admitting it. We don't know. We've done this with humans, which I've been reading about, where they, are on motorbikes or whatever, right through the city. They have people just release these mosquitoes right through town. And but anyway, you're going to try it this way. Now, this stood out to me. I have to look into it further, but these kind of things really bother me. So when I said IIT, which I have always seen referred to as incompatible insect technique, and that is having to do with, I believe, specifically using this wolbachia bacteria for, making it a sterility situation. They are now in this document calling IIT insect incompatibility technique. So not incompatible insect technique, but insect incompatibility technique. Now, maybe they just decided that sounds better. I see no reason to do that. And I will say over the last couple of years, we have seen how our federal agencies play trickery with words and definitions. And I think we need to keep an eye on that. I don't like it. That's all I'm saying. I've looked into it and I have not found enough information to say one way or the other why that has happened. If anyone comes across that information and, maybe they just decided it sounds better. What? Does it seem necessary to swap those words? Something odd is going on, in my opinion. But we'll see. Okay, here we have something that you're going to be interested in. We talked about the two labs that they're supposed to be importing these mosquitoes from, and that was Mosquito Mate in Kentucky and Verily Life Sciences in San Francisco. So here in this federal document, they're telling us TNC, that's the Nature Conservancy, committed to collecting and providing some of the initial costs to deploy Wolbachia IIT for the first site in Hawaii through a contract with Verily Life Sciences, a subsidiary of Google. What?
Wow. Yeah, we were wondering what the connection was there.
Well,
Interesting.
that's interesting, and it's about to get more interesting. What would Google have any interest in mosquitoes, biological agents? What's going on?
That's very interesting because Bezos just moved here, who owns Google, and now he's about to get a Google funded mosquito laboratory here. That's interesting.
Does he own? I don't know his affiliation or whether or not he's affiliated with Google. I wouldn't be
Oh, I'm sorry,
surprised.
Amazon. Sorry,
Yeah,
I
I
got
would have to
confused.
look.
Sorry,
I'm not sure, but
I
it's,
take that back.
we're talking about big tech and big biotech, and based on what happened, with pharmaceuticals in the last couple of years, 3 years, and prior to that, but what we've become aware of. We know that big tech and the pharmaceutical industry are very closely tied, and all of that is tied into lab research through our federal government. And so all of this is, high alert to me. Um, so here we're talking about the reason that I pointed this part out is they're talking about what they already do to try to help these endangered birds because of the avian malaria and conservation and whatnot. And I just thought, why aren't we looking more into what we can do in this area, more natural, less experimental, safer ways that we can look at this. So DOI, that's the Department of Interior Bureaus, and that's what this document falls under. State of Hawaii, multiple non-governmental partners and landowners have made major contributions to the conservation and recovery of Hawaiian forest birds for more than 30 years. These efforts have included forest conservation and restoration, control of invasive ungulates, that is hoofed mammals, that would be like pigs and deer and the wild boars and whatnot, and predators, systematic monitoring of native birds and mosquitoes, public engagement, and for some species, captive care. So these are all things that they have been doing and will be, to my knowledge, continuing to do these things. So even when they had that portion of the EA where it said that the alternatives were to do this project or not do anything, I'm not sure that's even accurate. It appears they are still going to be doing some of this. That's not clear, and I will have to find out more about that. But, my thought is we're talking about, I know at least just for this project, not necessarily the long term. There's even more money potential tied into that, and we're just talking about the federal funded portion. But I think it was 14 million, just for this part of the project that we're looking at now. Could some of that not have been put towards the captive care, making sure that there's facilities here on the island so they don't have to send the birds to the mainland, because they're talking about doing that and people don't like that. I don't see why we couldn't have funding put into things like facilities for the birds, making sure that the areas can be cleaned up, because I think the mosquitoes are breeding in the standing water areas, and then when we have these animals like the wild boar, that they're tearing things up and causing areas where the water can pool and that kind of thing. So there's multiple solutions that would make a lot more sense and probably would be way more in tune with Native Hawaiian culture and, maybe people being able to hunt and feed and, anyway, I just wanted to point that out, that those things are happening and could happen. So now we're getting into the interesting stuff. These are the goals. We're going into long-term goals. Develop and deploy insect incompatibility technique to reduce the mosquito vector of avian malaria by 2026. So develop and deploy what they have now called insect incompatibility technique. So again, this used to be called, IIT used to be called incompatible insect technique. Now we're developing and deploying a different wording of that. And there are some other things I looked into about what they're working on with this technology, combining different things. And so we just don't even know what that means. But the fact that they have changed the terminology again makes me say, keep an eye on that. That's interesting. Mm-hmm. Establish captive care programs for bird species most at risk of imminent extinction. Okay, that's good. We like that. Make sure they're still in the state of Hawaii. And they're talking about moving some of the Maui birds to the Big Island and things like that. And, I can't say what the stance of some of the Native Hawaiian, elders would be on that. I think there is some issue sometimes with even moving them at all from what I've seen. Just wanting to keep things as natural and let nature take its course as much as possible. So if we could get some input from the community on that, that'd be great. Identify species that are appropriate for translocation, implement translocations to higher elevation on Hawaii islands. So by 2030, so that's what we're talking about, moving them from one island to the other to keep them at a safer, and I think, I'm not sure if it's the Hawaiian island, but some have not been affected by the avian malaria at this point, or not at all, or not heavily. So there's places that are better. Here's the important thing we're going to focus on. Develop and deploy next generation tools. Again, I want to remind you that Google, all right, one of the
Next
labs is a
generation tools.
yeah, one of the labs is a subsidiary of Google. And again, I want to remind you that in the environmental assessment, they're talking about establishing at least one lab here on the islands. And I will say I was curious, do we already have something like that going on? What's going on at the University of Hawaii? I had a little inkling about that, and I did find that there is something called the University of Hawaii Mosquito Lab. Don't know much about that, but my sense would be it's already tied into this. They're a partner in this project in the Birds Not Mosquitoes multi-agency partnership that is managing this project. So all things to look at. Okay, pre-implementation for next generation tools. Improvement of genetics and animal care facilities for Department of Interior in Hawaii to allow in vitro and in vivo tool trials. Okay. Research and development for synthetic biology control tools and IIT advances, which to me says we're advancing it from incompatible insect technique to insect incompatibility technique, which may encompass any number of things. Field trials of methods for improving malaria resistance in birds. Well, that's sounding good. Well, what could that be about? Improving malaria resistance in birds? Great. Well, we'll find out about that. Okay, new models for private and public partnerships would support novel technology deployment and implementation with consideration for intellectual property rights. We are going to be patenting some kind of biotechnology situation here. Oh, I'm on high alert on that.
And private-public partnerships, we know what that means. That's
right. We already know Google's involved.
Yeah, that's right. That goes right in the handbook with communism, socialism, overall, like governmental top-down control, private-public partnerships.
Yeah, some of us that have been on alert for the bigger agenda on a global scale are going to see a lot in here that is going to set off bells and whistles. But I think even people who are just looking at this from a standpoint of, what's going on in our environment and our community are going to say, this is not what I expected, and this is not at all what they presented to us. They very much presented, these aren't genetically modified, it's just a bacteria. Well, here we see, much as we suspected, no, it's very much next level geared towards biotechnology and things that everyone should be concerned about right now. So, okay, I'll be wrapping up soon. I know we didn't have too much time, so I just have a couple more things to show. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service provided $60,000 to the Akbari Laboratory, University of California, San Diego, to explore the development of next-generation precision-guided sterile insect technique, PGSIT, mosquito control tools. That is CRISPR technology. I looked into it. Look into it. That is CRISPR technology. If anyone has learned about that, it's not my wheelhouse, but I do know that it's come up in a lot of things about the particular agenda we're worried about. And so, these are things focused on manipulating the genetics of life. So that's just the mosquitoes. Develop and deploy next generation tools by 2032. Interesting time frame. The previous three objectives represent complementary options for reducing or reversing the declines of 4 species of native forest birds over the next decade. However, a total of 12 species are at risk of extinction over a somewhat longer period due to climate-facilitated expansion of mosquitoes. Synthetic biology may offer the most promising tool for island-wide eradication of mosquitoes and thus long-term persistence of the full suite of forest birds. So,
synthetic biology.
Yes, synthetic biology, whatever that might encompass, but I think we can already imagine what that might encompass. And the fact that, we're going to start off pushing that we're saving these 4 particular birds, but we've got 12 on the radar, and we are just not going to quit with this plan, and it's going to expand. And here comes the part that you're not going to like at all. And this is actually from the Maui environmental assessment. We looked at where the only alternatives they offer were doing this horrifying project or not doing anything at all. which may or may not be true, that they might still not be doing whatever measures they have been doing up to this point. But if you go to the appendix on this, where you can see some of the alternatives that they looked at and dismissed, one of them is genetic modification of birds. Under this scenario, forest bird genetic information would be modified to promote resistance to malarial infections. The practice of gene editing with CRISPR-Cas9 technology has been applied to domestic animals. And then at the end it says, this approach would not meet the purpose and need and is technologically infeasible at this time and has been dismissed from detailed analysis. Well, basically what they're saying is right here, technology for this approach is not available for near-term implementation. So it is not feasible because they haven't gotten it to where it needs to be yet, but we just saw that that's exactly what they're working on. That is exactly what this plan is. All roads end at genetic modification of birds, and frankly, that's not where they end. What's next? And they have the nerve to present this as honoring the evolution, the cultural connection, the spiritual connection to these birds, and they're talking about manipulating them and turning them into what they want them to be and playing with them in labs. It's disgusting. Disgusting. University of Hawaii Mosquito Lab. Sorry, I'm sure there's good people over there, but I just wanted to point out that yes, it's possible that this is already happening. Because did we need to agree to any of this? What else is happening in those labs? I keep hearing from multiple people that Anthony Fauci is being asked to come out and work for these islands. So is that what we're looking at? These kind of labs? Gain of function lab? I don't even know. I don't like any of it. Okay, so this is the Maui Environmental Assessment acknowledged potential impacts that they're talking about mitigation measures for and best practices. Now they do have, if you go to their actual environmental assessment, they talk about how they're going to mitigate those measures, and we can look at that, but I don't really think we need to focus on it. Everyone's welcome to take a look at that. It's in the resource mitigation measures section, and they're going to talk about how they're going to try to stop these things from happening, but that doesn't change the fact that they're well aware they might happen. So we are talking about wildland fire, possibly ignited by the helicopters delivering the mosquitoes. Spread of invasive weeds with the vegetation. There's going to be foot traffic, and there's going to be movement of different things, packaging that the mosquitoes are in, the mosquitoes themselves, a variety of things can happen there. Noise-producing activities affecting native wildlife, and that's something that they address multiple times, is that they're aware of the noise because we looked at the schedule with the drones and the helicopters, and there's also helicopters that are going to transport the people on foot, and it's sounding like an action movie. Anyway, noise-producing activities. Special status plant species, there might be disturbances to native and special status plant species and activities, the cultural activities, we'll look at that, could accelerate erosion. Wildlife species special status, impacts to nesting or roosting sites and noise disturbances. And, they might try to mitigate this, but you saw how many drone flights they're planning. Are these drone people like experts that could be in like the drone Olympic series event that know how to fly the drones where they're not going to disturb a nest that they don't even know is there, or, it's just ridiculous. Anyway. Special status species habitats, disturbances to special status species, adverse impacts with critical habitat, invasive species. They might transport and introduce established weeds, diseases, pathogens from one place to another. Cultural, historic, ethnographic resources, disturbances of traditional cultural practices. So they're presenting this as, we want to save the native birds because we're honoring the Hawaiian culture. And then multiple times they talk about the disturbances to the aina, the wildlife, the native birds themselves, the cultural practices. We'll go into some of the things that the Native Hawaiians who spoke on this were concerned about, and they just move right on and say, we don't think it'll be a problem. What? Okay. Human health and safety, threats to human health and safety. Well, that could be, again, the spread of disease. But hey, the drones, who knows? Wildfires, a lot of stuff happening here. Acoustic environment, noise impacts to visitors, landowners, communities, wilderness, sensitive resources. Okay, visitor experience, noise, viewscape impacts. They're aware this might happen. That's not great. I know we have a lot of people interested in making sure the visitor industry keeps thriving. So, like I said, this affects everybody. It doesn't matter what you're focused on. Nothing good's happening here. Wilderness preservation impacts on the character of the wilderness. The Nene Hawaiian goose, there are speed limits, and it's an endangered species. And just the fact that they've got it on the radar lets me know that they know something could happen there with all this movement and activity and helicopters and drones and packages and maybe even they are quietly admitting to the fact that releasing the mosquitoes themselves could be an issue. Okay, Hawaiian forest birds, drone hovering, risk that breeding birds would flush from active nests, helicopter rotor wash. So that is, and they're saying, we're going to make sure that doesn't happen, the helicopter rotor wash, but that is basically the force of the air coming down from the propeller of the helicopter, and so how that can affect what's happening below. So you can imagine what that might look like if there was a nesting bird situation and the force of that air from the propeller was, coming down at high speed. Hawaiian seabirds, breeding season, that's something else they have to look out for just in case. Hawaiian water birds, again, same as the Nene, there's speed limits, they're endangered, what might happen there. Here we have one that we should look at even a little more closely, which is the Opeapea, the Hawaiian hoary bat. We have drone hovering, risk of disturbing pup rearing, helicopter rotor wash, disturbing day roosting bats. Bats eat mosquitoes. Why are we, instead of allowing the bats to do what they do, now threatening the bats? Okay. So, and then one more thing, which I did mention, this is not even noted in things they need to mitigate, which is, what? I just couldn't be more horrified about this whole thing, but mosquito packaging. This is directly from their environmental assessment. Incompatible mosquitoes would likely be released in small biodegradable packages designed to open upon contact with the canopy or forest floor. So we're going to have multiple packages of whatever this is made of, however long it takes to degrade, whatever it does to the environment, who's cleaning this up, are they just assuming it's going to biodegrade, where's it going, we don't even know what volume we're dealing with. I'm going to continue focusing on that. I don't like that at all. Then the next thing I wanted to show, because I didn't mention it last time and we didn't look at this, these are the release locations. So I did show the map of the project area. These are the specific release locations. So you said that you had Haleakala Ranch possibly watching here. This shows right here how many acres would be the, part of their portion of the plan. And there are additional maps that I believe partition that out per land manager. But I just wanted to show this is the release total acreage, 48,164, and that has to do with the distance of the locations, which it appears to me are spaced apart based on how far they believe the mosquitoes can travel, probably between feedings, because like I said last time, they can only go so far until they need to fuel up, and the feedings would be on nectar, I think, that the way that they're basing this, but the females would also be feeding on blood, which would be wildlife and the birds and whatnot, and possibly humans. Okay, so this is the map showing the release area here. And so this bright pink outline is the full project area. And then these colors here denote the different elevations. And so how much volume would need to be released per elevation. And so when you're looking at the numbers and you think, well, they did say, the higher elevations might not need as many treatments. That would be the blue line here. So really we're looking at this red area, and then the yellow is kind of a medium elevation. So pretty much they're going to be releasing probably more frequently in the bulk of the area. And if you look at the details, it's confusing because it shows the red as the high and the blue as the low. but that is the high frequency of release in the low elevation areas. So
Hmm.
where it has blue and it says low, those are the high elevation areas with the lower frequency of release. So so here's the website homepage, and right here where it says comment in bright red takes you to a link where you can submit your comments to the Maui Environmental Assessment, which is also available on the homepage of the website for you to read through. It's 260 pages, and it's interesting.
Some light reading.
And yeah, I'm kind of going through different sections as they come up and honing in on specific things. But and then right under that, we were recently came across this information that the EPA application for emergency exemption is also online, and there's a public comment period for that per federal law. The deadline for that is December 30th, so actually that one's coming up sooner. And both of them are important. I guess the reason I keep putting the Maui environmental assessment first, even though the deadline is later, is because that is crucial. But please do comment on both, and all of the information that you can use for commenting, which has been vetted for scientific accuracy. There's references, and all of that is on our website under the risk area specifically.
So, I mean, this is it's a very scary situation. I mean, it seems like everything, the transhumanist agenda is in process of trying to genetically alter and modify everything from our foods to our insects to our birds to humans. So I mean that the agenda fits right into the hands of everything else that we're seeing um, globally. So it's a very scary, scary agenda, and with it coming right here as an experimental, um, project that's going to be launched in Maui, that hits home real quick.
It really does. And it's, I was really, I don't want to say surprised because I had an idea that they were withholding the long-term plan and that this kind of thing was going to tie into it. But to see it just so blatantly in writing, and I just, yeah, I really hope that people are now on alert about this and are as concerned as I am. And I would find it really hard to believe that, particularly Native Hawaiians and people interested in preserving and honoring the culture and history and nature of the islands is going to be on board with genetically modifying these birds. What? Okay. I don't know. If someone has a different opinion, I'd love to hear it, but I'm not feeling it, you know? And I would say to anybody who does think that, there's some reason this project needs to happen, we're doing something good for the birds, go up to the forest, go up to one of these places that are part of the project area, sit there by yourself and listen to the birds. Okay? I'm about to cry, seriously. The birds don't want this. There's no freaking way the birds want this.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And this is definitely not a way to save the birds, and it's not a way to you know to expose our entire very fragile environmental system to an experiment where we're just continuing to mess with God's creation by continuing to alter any of the genetics that we see fit, just to you know for our own purposes and advantages. And again, with my mind of looking at the world as it has been right now, the agendas that we're seeing on a global scale, this kind of fits for the puzzle of a lot of the other things that we're seeing. So thank you so much, Tina, for bringing this information to us, and for caring enough to make sure this information gets out. How can our audience find you and find more information?
Yeah, again, the website hawaiiunites.org has all of this information. I will post this federal information so people can take a look at that as well. But the most important thing right now is that public comment period for both the Maui Environmental Assessment which you have until January 23rd to get your comments in. There's a link right there on the front page of the website. And then there's also that link in green on the front page to the EPA exemption, emergency exemption application. And we want to oppose both of those things. And particularly for the Maui environmental assessment, we want to insist on an environmental impact statement, which would be where they really have to take a detailed look about how this is affecting the environment. And this EA process is them trying to avoid doing that, trying to hold information and not really doing the studies that are needed, which if they do those studies, there's no way that the outcome is going to be that this is not going to have an impact on the environment. That is absurd. Absurd.
Absolutely.
So please, please share this information. Make sure people are aware of this. Everybody, let's come together on this. Again, put whatever disagreements we might have aside. We can't let this move forward. We need to have our voices heard, and we need to put a stop to this. It goes so beyond, just bringing in a few mosquitoes. We're talking about 40 billion and everything else that I just described to you, and I'm not even done looking at this information. So, yeah, please go to the website, hawaiiunites.org, and you can get in touch with me, sign up for our newsletter, and if anyone wants to, join me in speaking out, that'd be great.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Tina. And please keep us updated. And if you get more information, let's get you back on. Keep sharing this information.